So what's your name and where are you from?
Mike Siordia, technically from Hermosa Beach, but
But you were born, which I always find an interesting story. This is for me is always interesting. You were born
I was born in Oakland, California,
Oaktown.
Oaktown.
When did you move down to the Bay or to South Bay?
I was just about to be 10 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so how was surfing introduced to you?
My dad was he was told not to be a surfer by his parents, and yeah, he started by buying like old shitty boards from whatever local shop in like Half Moon Bay.
Okay.
So he would sneak off and do that through like late 60s through the 80s, and then he kind of stopped when I was born. And then we moved to LA, and we moved right on the beach in Hermosa, and
There you go.
it was like, I got you a board.
Now,
You want to do this?
the funny thing I always find, and this is like the argument of Hermosa versus Huntington versus Santa Cruz, Surf City.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a different claim to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Huntington is allowed to claim Surf City because they're the first ones to capitalize on charging people to have surf events. So competition, yeah, it's not based on the surf.
But the first surf shop ever, or quote unquote first surfboard maker, was underneath the Hermosa.
Yeah,
Pier.
Manhattan Pier.
Manhattan Pier. Sorry.
Velzy, yeah. And then you got, Santa Cruz, like the princess came from Hawaii and introduced surfing on a tour, so they get that claim too. We're like the manufacturing hub, I think.
I always think it's funny, like when people they tussle about it.
Yeah,
like they're
really...
kind of like, no, fuck it, we were the first place.
Yeah.
So you grew up in that environment. Who are some of the people that you grew up around that you were like kind of like, hey, I want to surf like these people that you saw in your environment?
I think, just like the local, like punk rock, skater surfer dudes were my first influences. I was like really heavily into shortboarding.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the Malloy brothers came to town and went to a local surf shop and did like a signing, and it was pretty big that day, and I watched them surf, and that was kind of like next level. Some local heroes like Greg Browning was a big deal for us. He was like one of the only guys to kind of make it mainstream, surfer magazine cover, stuff like that. And then I grew up in a surf factory, Wayne Miata factory.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we would have legends like coming through regularly. Greg Knoll owned the building, so he'd come through.
That's that one long one, right?
Yeah.
The one that like still to this day, there's different, because Anderson was there.
Anderson is there now.
It's still there, Aquatech or whatever it's called, right? Yeah, they're still there.
Yeah.
Because wasn't the story like when Greg Knoll first had it, was like basically one side of the building was the very beginning of the surfboard manufacturing, and then the end of it was like a retail.
Yeah, so like the top, it like steps down terrace, right? Like 5 different like buildings, and they would blow foam at the top. They would shape them. They would step down through these big garage doors and come into the next to be glass, sanded, polished, and then sold in the front. So it was like the first major like manufacturing plant, start to finish.
That's Surf City.
Yeah, and then you had like Rick right next door, Velzy, Jacobs. Weber was there.
It's all the architects, basically, California's surfboard and manufacturing, if you will.
Yeah, I think, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure it was like 1966 to 69. Like 98% of surfboards worldwide came out of Hermosa Beach, which is a 1 mile square. So, yeah. Oh, Bing was there as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Shit was going down for sure.
How did you originally got into surfing, shortboarding? How did you get into longboarding? Like, what was you were like the aha moment of like, hey, I want to do that?
So like I said, like Black Flag is from Hermosa. It's kind of like it was like a little bit of an edgy kind of punk driven town, and I don't know, everybody was doing the same thing, and I don't think I knew that I was against the mainstream at the time, but even this subculture of like surfing, I was seeking something a little different. And my dad, he didn't force anything on me. It was just surf. That's all I care about. But very specific places that we would go, like Malibu or Sano. He always had a longboard for me. I think at the time it was like an 8.2 Becker single fin, and I didn't really ride it, but if it was under like shoulder high at any of those spots, I would have to ride my longboard. He would be like, "You ride longboards here. It's just what you do."
That makes sense.
So it was always there. And then probably like 96, 97, I started hanging out at Just Longboards, which was a retail shop that was owned by ET Surf, and it was like mainly longboards and I guess what you would call mid-lengths now, and alternative craft.
Okay.
And people like Bob McTavish would come through, and it was such a different approach. It wasn't like this manufactured, everybody's pumping out like the same model shortboard. It was like more went into it, you know. So it was that time where I was working with Pat Ryan and Bob McTavish, and they just kind of threw me on a longboard because I had a little experience on one, and I don't know, the floodgates opened. I just got obsessed.
Like,
yeah, I was like, oh my god, this is like the coolest thing, because I loved getting barreled, but Hermosa sucks. So you know, you get closeout tubes. Once in a while, you'd get that feeling of getting tubed, and you're like that's the ultimate feeling.
Yeah.
When you're on a longboard, you can surf, you know, 300 days a year and hang 10, and that hang 10 is like the same feeling as getting tubed for me. It's like time stops, and I just feel like a very specific feeling from inside, and I'm like, whoa, I can hang 10 every day. I can't get tubed every day.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, so that's kind of where it all started. It's all feeling based for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, it's almost like, you know, a lot of people, anyone who surfs and plays golf kind of equates it to like, there's sometimes you hit that golf shot that you'll remember that's like so perfect, and like you were not even thinking and time was standing still and that kind of thing. And that's the same thing with surfing. Like you'll always chase that hang 10 or that tube, like you remember it. Like you remember, like you said, it's a feeling based thing. Like the visual's even out of your head.
Totally.
Like you don't even remember where the fuck it happened, but you remember how it felt. You remember looking down and being like, oh, I'm floating.
Right.
Like for me, I know like when I started to learn how to nose ride, like it's the thing that like always turned me on. Like when I had that feeling when you look down and you're like, oh wow, like there's nothing underneath me. Wow, that's pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, we remember, like, you know, I remember great days from when I was 12 years old, like they were yesterday. And obviously there's been thousands of surfs in between that I don't remember that well, you know. So yeah, the feeling is the thing that I'm always searching for.
I think it's the thing that gets everybody to come back. It's like the feel of stuff. Now you started, did you start on 2+1s kind of because it was that era?
Yeah, it was kind of the only thing available. And then like I think, you know, that like later 90s, probably 98 or something, I decided that I wanted to try like a single fin because of that nose ride.
Yeah.
So nose riding is all I wanted to do, and I just started riding single fins and became a pretty heavy advocate for it. Even surfing competition, then you had to ride a 2+1 or you wouldn't get scored.
Really?
Yeah, it was like I would go out on a 2+1 and catch 3 waves, and then you know, I would drag my single fin out and throw the tri fin up on the beach, and then I'd go and hang 10 the rest of the heat, and probably not get scored on those waves, but that was my protest.
But that's also, was that at like Malibu type contest, like waves like that?
All over the place.
But I was going to say, because the whole reason you did that, it's like, when am I going to get a chance to surf this without anyone fucking bothering me?
Yeah.
You're like, you know, like I want to go. I mean, it's like the big reason most people surf like a Malibu contest. They're like, hey, the only it's not about winning it. It's like, I got a wave to myself where a judge is saying, hey, no one else can get on the wave but you.
Right. Cut that crowd down.
Yeah, which is great. You've done competitions like when you were younger and stuff like that. And one of the first contests I saw you out, and which was a big inspiration for me to get into longboarding, was at the Hot Dogger. I think it was maybe it was the first or second year. I know you won, So I can't remember which one it was. It might have been the first one.
I think it was the first year. I don't think I won since.
Okay, but I remember just like that whole like kind of thing. So, how do you feel that like? Not that competitions have a place in longboarding, but do you think they're even relevant anymore? Does it like even behoove anyone to like kind of like aim for that? In your opinion, like everybody's gonna be different, but in your opinion,
I just, after 20 years of competition, I realized that competition kind of put a stop to the evolution of my surfing.
yeah,
Like I said, surfing is a feeling-based thing for me, and to be told that I'm doing something right or wrong based on somebody's opinion,
yeah,
it's not for me. I don't really have a competitive bone in my body anymore.
yeah.
And I don't know where it's going. But yeah, I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, my perspective has always been, and look, I'm not a competitor. I'm an adult learner, so take this with a grain of salt.
We should all be adult learners
Yeah.
and learning new things all the time.
I mean, yeah, I think it's
I'm
important.
an adult learner.
I have no shame in it. Like, look, I started surfing at like 39. I'm like 50 years old now. Still love it as much as like the little kid who's 15 years old. But I know coming from like a skateboarding background and the era of skateboarding I come from, like I was kind of the last generation that was like, remember when I first started skating, like you had to do contests, right? It was like that's how you get seen. And then when I first started skating, and then it became a thing like who gives a shit about contests? I think that's the thing that's kind of attracted me to this world of surfing. It's one of the many things is that kind of it's like you can make your space in it any way you want. You could be a longboarder and be like, hey, I'm gonna do the WSL World Tour. That's gonna be my thing. I'm gonna concentrate on that. Or even like, hey, I'm gonna do club contests. That's gonna be my thing. Or you could be the person who's like, I don't do any of that shit.
Yeah.
I just go surf on my own, my spot. I do the thing. And maybe I post it on social media. Maybe I don't. Maybe I'm just like this local kind of like nobody. Not nobody, like a local hero that like everybody knows, but it's like never captured.
We all need those. Yeah.
No, and I think for me, I've always been attracted to those.
Yeah.
Mostly because like in skateboarding in New York City in the late 80s, early 90s, there's like 20 people like that maybe one photo exists somewhere of them, like the Ivan Perez's, like the Ryan Hickeys, like they turned pro for some company and then you never heard of them. But we as people who witnessed that firsthand are kind of like, fuck, those people are special.
Yeah.
It's like seeing a diamond, right? It's like finding a diamond. You're like, I want to stare at that fucking diamond that I found in the fucking sand all day long.
Totally.
Which is cool. And I think that's the thing that like, I've seen over the last 10 years of being in this kind of being like, the more personally attractive thing to me, kind of thing. So I think there's a place in time for a contest for sure. But it's nice to see that there's people paving their way outside of it. Now, you come from a very, if you will, like that's why I want to delve a little bit into the history of where you come from, into very traditional based surfboard manufacturing.
Right.
Like blah, blah. Now, recently, you've had a big change in your surfing and gone a different route where you've hooked up with CJ Nelson. Do you want to talk about like how that started and where that's going? And how did it start? How did it start you and him like starting this new relationship which you've had over the recent past?
I think it was like 8 years ago or something. I went on a trip with Foam Cemetery. He was on the trip. We did like a week in a place up north and captured a bunch of amazing surf.
I have that issue.
Yeah, I think it was the last, maybe one of the last.
It's like one or two before the last one.
Yeah,
the photos are beautiful.
Yeah, I don't think it ever made it to the U.S., but it was a good one.
No, I had to pay a lot of money to
But yeah, we'd kind of known each other through surf contests, the club thing, some like pro nose ride events, stuff like that, but never super tight. And then on that trip, I was really pretty heavily into substance abuse, and he, I think, was about 2 years sober at that time.
Okay.
And so by doing nothing other than being himself, it was inspirational because I was like, I'm fucking drinking, trying to drink as many beers as I can every night around the fire, and then trying to go surf all day the next day. And that was something I'd been doing for years. But yeah, he was going to bed early. He was, seemed like he was meditating. He was surfing absolutely insane, which was always the case, but this was like a next level.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of reached out to him shortly after that. I did like a little bit of a break from drinking and stuff, and he was wide open, like open arms, just there to talk to. And I think that lasted 4 or 5 months, and then I went back out and did my thing.
Yeah.
So I was like a little embarrassed to reach out, but I decided that I was going to go that route. And on my 1-year anniversary, I just shot him a text and was like, "Hey, you don't even owe me a response, but I want to."
And when was this?
This is like 2 years, almost 3 years ago now.
3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, you don't owe me anything, but I want you to know that your time didn't go to waste. Like, I've got a year today, so just shooting that out there. And again, like right away, was open arms and awesome. And then a mutual friend of ours from LA, he started surfing with CJ a bunch at Sano, and he was like, "You got to come to Sano and hang out with us and go surf." So if you know me, you know that Sano wasn't my favorite place for a long time.
No, because I always beg you to come since I moved down here, and you're like, "Fuck that, I'm not doing it."
Well, I just grew up in shitty beach.
No, I
like going fast.
Look, I understand why.
This has all changed now, but yeah. So I just went down there and started surfing with them, and kind of got a closer, tighter bond. And one day he was like, "Hey, if you want to figure something out with your boards, like, I'm here." So I think it was the next day I drove down to Oceanside, and I was like, "What are we talking about?" Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of blossomed in the most amazing direction for what I believe is the evolution of my surfing, and for some people, maybe, the evolution of longboarding, where it needs to be going. Mm-hmm. For a lot of people that were kind of feeling that they wanted a little more than just your traditional longboard, mm-hmm. that, is another feeling. But mm-hmm. if you're looking for a little power steering and a little more, bite in your turns and still get that classic nose ride feeling, that's kind of where we're going with it.
No, I mean, I think having known you for now 7-8 years, I can't even remember, because we were talking about this before you sat down on the mic, seeing you at San Onofre a couple of years ago when you started coming down made me very happy.
Cool.
And because you've been an inspiration to me. Like, the big reason I got into longboarding was like, I used to see you drive by and you're fucking like, I don't even know, I'm a shitty car person. Well, I'm a shitty like pre-1990 car person. And seeing you, I forgot what car you had, but you had that red and white night train on your car, and I would see you drive by and I was like, I want to be that fucking guy. Right? So like, you've always been like an inspiration. I know.
Poor thing.
I know. You've always been an inspiration for me, and you know that. And so like, seeing you there and seeing that version of you, it was always the version in my heart I always felt you were. And so for me, it made me very happy. Like, it really did. Like, when I saw you there, I was like, oh, this is the Mike I know.
Yeah.
This is the Mike I know. Like, this is the fucking spark. Like, this is the, like, just your eyes were lit up brighter, like everything was better. And then even seeing your surfing, the thing that you're going back to, like, CJ when he had substance abuse problems, or anyone who has substance abuse problems on the board, like, while they may be good based on their talent, when you see what they're like when they're sober, it's like kind of like it's like a little boost. It's like, oh shit. Like, it's like Andrew Reynolds in skateboarding is a prime example. Like, he was throwing himself down fucking gazillion things, but like, his hands were always touching the floor and this and that. And then the second he sobered up, it's like, oh, the hands don't touch the floor. You're not so sloppy. So I noticed that right away from your surfing, which was like, I think part of it was probably you, the sobriety thing. But also I think it was two things. It was that, and then getting on this different type of craft, which I know from knowing you were pretty much reluctant back in the day, right?
Oh yeah. Like,
you were like,
probably very loud about it.
You very much were. And I got a lot of my attitude from that. I was like, yeah, fuck that shit. I was like, fuck
everything was my jam forever.
I was like, I'm going to be on that train. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But I've recently, I think it was like maybe a couple of weeks ago, when we talked, you were like, hey, there's something about this I can't explain. It's
Yeah.
different. So what, without your version of like I can't explain it, what was it like when you stepped on one of those Thunderbolt boards that kind of made it like, oh shit?
Well, there's this stigma from my childhood where surf tech is just like the standard of EPS, and that's what we all think it is, and I don't know that I guess the open-mindedness that has come with my surfboard designs lately in poly, which I'm riding majority poly still, constantly working on stuff. Feeling, out different rails and putting edge in my tails and stuff like that. That just kind of blossomed into like, well, what else is out there? And I have a pretty low expectation of everything in life now. Like I try to set the bar low. That way I'm excited.
You're pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's better being pleasantly surprised than being disappointed, right?
Totally.
Like fuck it.
So, with that optimism and that approach, I started hopping on Thunderbolts recently. And you can't compare it to anything. It's kind of a trip. It just doesn't work like a polyboard. You can have the same outline, same everything, dimensions, and it just feels different based on the technology. So it's like this lively, snappy, it's a different type of surfing, which is the direction I want to go. And like I said, I'm riding poly majority, but that really opened my mind. I was like, oh my God, this thing drives when my polyboard that's the same shape kind of starts to die. And like, it's kind of the difference between a skateboard deck that's been, used for a month every day compared to that first ollie on a brand new
snap.
It's fucking poppy, snappy.
Like Christmas Complete always feels great.
Feels alive, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a different kind of board, and it's a different approach.
Have you had to alter your surfing because of that? Like, have you had to like kind of like, hey, because the boards are going to react this way, I have to do that. Has that been a part of it?
So there is an acclimation period, and for me, it was about 3 or 4 sessions.
That's nothing.
Right, not a big deal. Just kind of anticipating the difference once I started to feel it, and then getting into that groove has been the coolest thing because I feel like the boards are even more approachable. So I feel like you put a halfway decent surfer or a beginner on a board, and if it's more user-friendly and functional, they're going to have a better time and feel that they're surfing better and probably are surfing better. When you put a good surfer on something that's user-friendly and just made to light things up, I can actually dial my push back so I'm not like jamming turns, which turns into wild arms, which I don't like. So I've kind of been able to dial my pushing back, and it's really smoothing my surfing out because I think less. I don't have to counteract like an overturn. Yeah, so it's just it's a whole new feeling, and this whole thing being feeling based is feeling amazing.
No, I mean, I've noticed in your surfing from like, you being on these boards and just your recent journey and stuff that I think this all makes sense because it doesn't look like you're trying to force it.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like you're trying to force like a lot of the turns and stuff and set up. Like it just feels very flow.
It does.
Like before, I think a lot of times like you were like really like, oh, like there was a fucking like I got to put a fucking dig into this kind of thing.
Well, my equipment wasn't made to do what I was trying to do.
I know you were surfing. You were searching for that. Like I mean, for as long as I know you, you've been searching for these like magical boards, which one of them you had, and it changed my life because I tried it once and I was like, these are kind of boards I want to surf. And I told you I saw that board, the black bottom board.
Nice.
I saw like someone I guess from New Hampshire had it.
Oh really? Yeah, last I heard it was in Tofino.
No, that's where it's Tofino.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were down in town, and I'm like walking. It was when they had the gate closed. This is like a couple of months ago. They had the gate closed because of rain at Sano, and I'm walking down and I see the board. I'm like, I fucking know that board. And they were like, oh yeah, I bought it from like whatever Surf Source or whatever it was called, kind of thing. I was like, you don't know what you have on your hands. Like that's the fucking magic board.
That was a good one, and everything that I'm doing now, like got a few things coming out in poly in the next couple months, but as far as like my longboard model, that's pretty much what I'm doing. I've just updated a few things, but that template.
No, I remember. It's in my head because it's like I've always like that board, and then Worm having me borrow a black nail because someone stole my board, and I have a long board. Basically, every board I've had since, which has been now, it's been 7 years almost because it's been since my daughter's been born, has been in that vein. Like follows that fucking mold. Like I'm like, nope, and I've tried different stuff and it does not fucking work for me. Like Grant tried making me something. We're like, hey, let's try this. It was like that was a fucking 8 month of fuck. I hate surfing. That was 8 months of like I hate surfing.
You found the.
I just know what works for me. I just know like it's funny because it physically and skill level it doesn't make sense, but I don't like surf like
feeling based.
Yeah, it is. That's what it is. Like I know, like even yesterday I surfed like Doheny, and it's the second day on a board that Grant made me. That's going back to what he used to make me. You know, first like drop bottom turn to set up. I was like, oh, this feels right.
You're back at home.
I'm like, and someone I was with who I surf with a lot was kind of like, they're like, oh yeah, this looks like how you normally surf. And I'm
cool.
like, okay. So yeah, feeling based, but you're saying that with these Thunderbolt boards, there's this dramatic different feeling.
Yeah, I mean, you got a carbon stringer, you got EPS blank, and then there's still glass. Like you can schedule the glassing however you want. Mm-hmm. They're scrubbed out. It's the same. It's just EPS.
Now, how does that? Now, obviously, you're speaking about it on longboards. Are you guys using that same technology on smaller boards, and how does that translate?
Yeah, the same technology from like 5'8" or 5'6" up to 12 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just got a flex pattern in it that is basically geared towards drive. So all of our turns are getting extra squirt, and yeah,
extra squirt. I like that.
It's amazing, dude.
Yeah. That'd be a good T-shirt, like the squirt logo, the soda logo, the extra squirt. Like that'd be like,
well, extra squirt.
Yeah, fucking make that. Make that shit. Make some money now.
Yeah.
I gave you guys an art direction idea. Have fun with it. But you're also, the other thing is like underneath the CJ umbrella, if you will, there's like, obviously his models and stuff like that. But then there's also the crime boards.
Yeah.
So, and I've seen you ride those, and that's a very different thing.
That's a very different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are all also EPS, and that's a hard board. It just has a soft pad put on the top. Mm-hmm. So, those have been really fun. Actually, that's been part of my evolution too, of like letting go of all this traditional in the box kind of longboarding, or surfing in general, I guess. But yeah, those things take all the seriousness out of surfing for me, because like surfing's fun and feeling based, but it's also for the onlooker when you hit a certain level. And when I go out on those boards, I don't take them seriously, which
that's cool.
Translates into like way more fun.
But that's the whole reason everybody starts surfing, right?
Exactly.
You had a fucking good time. Like you caught that first wave, you're like smiling, your hands are in there. You're like,
totally.
I want this. Yeah, we get too caught up in this bullshit of kind of like, I gotta be fucking this. Like, fuck you. Mean, we all do. Look,
nobody's getting rich as a pro longboarder, so we should chill the fuck out.
Yeah, sure. Like who's making the money? Not us.
Everybody's got another job or 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always dug the crime thing for me, and like when people, like anyone I know who when they start surfing, I'm always like, hey, get a crime board, like get a crime board because it's not gonna bust. Like the first thing that the first 2 years of like you surfing, your board's getting fucking banged the fuck around because you don't know what the hell you're doing. The worst thing to do is buy like a nice board and it's just you're getting a ding repaired, right?
Totally.
Like fucking all over the place. Like why not get one of these boards that's a little bit more forgiving? That like, hey, if you have a small place to live, it fucking hits the wall or the stairs as you're going upstairs, it's fine. Nothing's gonna happen. The other thing too is that they're like genuine shapes, right? There's genuine bottom contour. There's genuine like. It's not like a fucking flat, like the misconception I think with those boards a lot of times until people see them in hand is that they're just going to be flat like every other like board that's like that.
Yeah, I mean, we've got, Neil Purchase Jr. has a collab, so it was hand-shaped by him originally, and then it goes into the crime construction. Ryan Engel Um, we got real shapers shaping these things. We're riding the shit out of them to make sure that they work well.
Yeah.
And then they go from poly into the new construction. So yeah, these are real surfboards.
No, and they perform great. I mean, I think like I've only ridden one or two. I definitely want to get my hands on a smaller one. Like I think there's that one that you guys did with what's his name, with Dylan Graves.
Yeah.
Like that one is kind of like a pseudo Bonzer kind of like
Yeah.
thing, which I know you. Everyone makes fun of me, but I do like my Bonzer stupidity.
That's okay.
You're one of the first ones to make fun of it. You're like, why you ride that? I'm like, oh no, I'm just stupid. I'm the person that likes to ride a unicycle in gravel. Like, like that one time it's gonna be great. 1 out of 500 times it'll be great. And
Are you having fun doing it?
Yeah.
That's what matters.
Yeah, that's what matters. I'm fine with that. The other thing that's cool is you guys do a lot of stuff with artists and stuff like that, and the look and feel of the branding and that whole thing. And I think that's something that's like kind of nice to see in surfing. I think a lot of times, and I think what I'm attracted to a lot of stuff that CJ is doing in general, is that it's, and this goes back to what you were talking about, like, hey, surfing's kind of, especially in the longboard single fin world, whatever you want to define it as. I tend to call it the ride everything world.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty much been stagnant. Like it's pretty much like Thomas and Sprout happened, and we've just been on that fucking tip, right?
It's been 20 years.
Right, 20 years of that shit, which is fine,
Yeah.
but it's nice to see something that breaks out of that, that's kind of more approachable to, you know, aesthetically to someone who's like, didn't grow up in a beach environment, right? That didn't like for me, like that was the thing that was attracted to crime. I was like, oh, it's like graffiti and it's like skate shit and it's like more urban, it's fucking dope and it's edgier and the branding's this and that, versus like a Birdwell Britches. Like I don't relate to that. Like
Right.
I don't relate to that. So I think the thing that you guys do that's really important, I think, in this surfing world, and which was probably influenced a lot of other people and brands to come out, is that like, hey, while we are steeped in tradition, we know that progression has to be a part of it, and so that equals not just what we're progressing. Like the Thunderbolt thing is a progression of equipment, right? And then it's also in the branding and the look and the feel of it. Coming from someplace that you've come from, do you think that it will help progress and accessibility to surfing, or do you think it's just going to have its own little niche? Like, where do you think this kind of like look and feel helps surfing?
I think it's gonna, broaden the demographic a bit. We do collabs with, like, we did one with Huff. It's kind of getting out to people that don't necessarily surf and maybe making it a bit more approachable to them, which is great. Like surfing is for everybody. But I think it really boils down to like none of us that are involved are like the traditional beach kid.
No, you're not.
And I think that, surfing has gone in a different direction as far as like fashion and what people think is cool. And yeah, I hope that it works for people, because like we're just doing what we love.
No, I think it will. For me, it's like, again, I always, just because the world I come from, excuse me, is that late 80s, early 90s skateboarding. It's sort of like, there was a brand that hit the scene in the early 90s called Menace, and they were the first kind of like, yo, we're going to rob you, skateboard company. Like, everybody on the team was like, yo, we did time. Like, in the fucking ghetto. Like, we fuck shit up. Like, the beginning of their video part was them beating someone up. And I remember when that happened, it was such an antithesis to, like, not maybe us from New York. From New York, we could relate to that, because we're like, hey, we're not being kind of shown that way, but that's the environment we grew up in.
That's what you're seeing when
Yeah.
you walk down the street. And
Yeah, and it was representation, right? And we saw that, we were like, yo, that's dope. Now, that was like 1994, right? So that's 30 years ago. Now you look at skateboarding, it is that world. Yeah. Like, at least a big part of it is like, it's very urban, it's very like graffiti driven, it's very hip hop. I mean, it's been that way for a while. That's why I'm hoping brands like you guys are going to have that thing where it's like, not only will you guys exist, but then all these other brands will spawn off. They'll be like, oh no, we're definitely like half our team don't even live anywhere near the ocean, kind of thing. I mean, I just find it interesting for me, and it was always like a big attraction. When I saw Crime, I remember being like, whoa, this is sort of like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, this is like my surfing. Yeah. This is what I want. Like, I want fucking dirtbag kids that grow up in the fucking project surfing. Like, that's what I want. versus like the blonde hair, blue eye, Birdwell britches, like you're playing the Grateful Dead. No offense, Grateful Dead sucks, but like, I'm just gonna. Sorry, I can't help it. But like, it's kind of been refreshing to see that. But the thing that's interesting too is like you guys are also very respectful to tradition as well, right? There's like a update with tradition. Like I look a lot at like the Flying Diamonds fins, right? Like that, a lot of it's kind of like an update of kind of what's been out there, but pushing it a little bit more. Now you've been riding those fins.
I have been riding those fins only for about a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about them? Like, what's your take on it?
Mark, he comes from an airplane background.
Okay, enough said.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't have to say much, but the foils are incredible because water hydrodynamics. It's very similar. I mean,
Yeah, aerodynamics and hydrodynamics, they basically do have a lot of the same fundamental principles.
yeah. So the foils that are going down are like none that I've ever seen, and they are working really well. Yeah.
What kind do you now with the boards you're surfing? What kind of fin template are you riding?
So I guess technically what I've been surfing is like involvement style. I've been riding the CJ Nelson 10.5 Power Flex from Flying Diamonds.
And how long of a board is that on that you put that on?
I'm riding boards between 9.7 and 9.9. So yeah, those are my go-tos usually. I'm working on a fin that's gonna give you most of the aspects of that. Maybe a little more stability for somebody who wants a little bit more of a loggy feel.
Yeah.
Because I mean, my boards they work so well that I almost need to slow them down. So I'm going to use a little bit more of a full template.
Huh. I mean, it's better having the problem that you have to slow the thing down than you have to speed it up.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Like I'd rather have to put brakes than a new engine in my car.
Shit.
100% of the time. Like
you can turn the nitro down just a little bit.
Don't step on the gas so much.
Yeah.
It's easy. But then if you have to floor it and then it's barely going, you're fucking pissed.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're surfing. I mean, one of the things that, like I said, you being an influence for me and my surfing and trying to like more think about surfing is like I remember you just saying like, hey, look, like you wanna shove that fucking board so deep into the fucking pocket that like there's nothing left sticking out. Like, that kind of thing. And that's always been the best feeling, right? Whether you're nose ride or not, like
pocket surfing is everything. That's your power source. I mean, I don't know about everybody, but that's where I want to live.
No, I mean, I sort of want. I think it's weird when, like, I'm not attracted to that, like, on the shoulder surfing. Like, again, going back to feeling, like, whenever I've been on the shoulder, like, recently I was in Mexico and I was surfing a board that's, like, not like anything I surf. Fucking wide fucking nose, the whole thing. Great board, but, like, typically not what I surf. And I remember it just being, when I first tried the board, like, I would be so far out on the shoulder and I'm like, I don't care if this looks right. It doesn't feel right. Like there's something weird about it.
Then it isn't the board for you.
No. Miguel did make a dope board. It's probably a good board for there, but it's not like my usual kind of thing. Now, another thing you guys are working on is that part-time lover brand. What's that about?
So those are also EPS boards. They're basically like the Crime construction, but doesn't have a soft top on it.
Okay.
So, and you're looking at like gloss, more, got a few more bells and whistles on them. So yeah, those will be a really fun.
Now, are those out yet, or it's like in the process of something?
We're in the process of those right now. I think they're going to be coming out in September, something like that.
Okay, so soon. I mean, that's not far away.
Yeah.
And so CJ has all these brands that you're associated with, and you guys have retail facing store as well.
Yeah. So Modern Beach Supply is our retail store and carries everything under the Subtotal distribution.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Subtotal is our umbrella distribution company.
Okay.
And that's going to be CJ Nelson Designs, Thunderbolt surfboards, Part-Time Lover, Crime, Flying Diamonds. Yeah.
Okay. And that's in Oceanside, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
Just
cool.
up from the pier on Pier View.
Oh, nice. That's a good location.
Yeah.
Because I remember when they started it, it was kind of like in this warehouse district kind of thing. It was like hard to
Yeah.
find. Like, I mean, it's hard to get people if you don't get like foot traffic. So one of the things that I want to talk to you about, and I think it's an important topic, especially not just in surfing in the world, is like you've obviously had, you've been 3 years sober now. What was like the big kind of like, hey, I need to do this moment? Like, what made you want to be like, all right, you know what, I'm done?
6 days in jail.
Yeah, okay, that'll do. I mean, no, it doesn't for a lot of people. Look, one of my close friends, believe me, like after the fifth bid, he was like, and the ankle monitor, he was like, I'm fucking done. Like, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, not really. That was the first time that I had been sober for that amount of time in years. So that was, getting through detox in a miserable environment was something else. It was something to remember. I mean, there was a whole lot leading up to that. I was fucking tired. Like,
it's exhausting.
Constantly, like, trying to figure out how to pay bills and just fucking probably not going about all of it in the best way.
Yeah.
Struggle, constantly feeling like shit. Mentally, I was just done, and I guess, I don't know if everyone goes through that, but that was my rock bottom. I was like, I'm just fucking tired. This isn't working. It's been 17 years of like nearly daily abuse. And it sucks that it took that long, but that's when I decided to walk left instead of right and try something new. Just like the surfboard, it's just like everything else I'm doing is running in a different direction, because obviously what I was doing before wasn't working.
No, I mean, well, isn't that the definition of insanity? Like doing the same thing over and over again, thinking you're going to get different results.
Absolutely.
So I mean, I always equate it to the like, I'm a big Seinfeld person. That George, when George was like, I'm going to do the opposite of everything my brain tells me to do, and he had like the most successful life. And he's like, that's, I just got to keep doing that. Like what my brain tells me, do the opposite.
It's truly like that.
Yeah.
I still, to every day, I'm like, oh man, like I have these urges, I want to go do things, not drink or whatever, but like, whoa.
Look, I'd like to eat half a cheesecake. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
And I know that's not a good idea. Like I'm like, man, my brain is telling me to do that, but maybe I should eat the cheesecake. Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
Now it's interesting because it's something that substance abuse is a big part of, and it is a big part of skateboarding surf culture, and it's probably very hard for a lot of people. And I know this from different personal experiences I've had myself. I've been, Cali sober for over 4 years, so I don't know. A lot of people be like, I'm not sober, but I haven't drank alcohol in 4 years. But and I know friends of mine who, like, from skateboarding, like a lot of them, when their careers ended, like basically they became the substance abuse. It was a natural progression because you're in your 20s, you're out partying, you're skating, you're surfing, blah blah blah, and then it comes a point where you're like not doing the skating or surfing, but then the partying becomes crazier and crazier.
Yeah, that's exactly how it went for me.
Yeah, and it happens for most people and stuff. I think the beauty of your story, and at least what I've witnessed firsthand, is like I said, like seeing you over the last couple of years and your progression in life has been very inspiring. And then like to see this, like there's just like a glow around you. Like there's no other way to explain it. Like it's kind of like your eyes are brighter. Like you're just like everything about you kind of thing. And it's funny because I just came back from a trip being back east with my family, and there's some people, friends of mine, who've known me for like 20 something years, and people have only known me for like maybe like 10 years or 15 years. And those people that have not known me for a long time, didn't know when I was like really deep into substance abuse, and they heard the stories and they like couldn't believe it. Like you do become a totally different person, but a totally different, better person, if you will.
Yeah, I think better decisions come along with it.
Yeah.
And everything starts to smooth out. You throw a little therapy in there, and life just starts to really smooth out. And I think I see it in my surfing. I think I'm less erratic and wild because
I think you're way smoother. I look at it and it's kind of. I remember one day I came up to Sano, and I didn't know if it was you or not. Like I'm watching from, and I'm like, whoa, and I'm like, no, that's fucking Mike. Like that's the fucking shit. Like I'm watching that shit. I'm like, that shit is dope. Like smooth. Like fucking smile on your face. Fucking no. Like the whole fucking thing, you know. And I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think it's something that I wish. I know it's hard for a lot of people to face their demons head on, you know, especially in substance abuse, because it comes from other stuff. You know, it's not just like most of the time substance abuse is tied into other trauma or stuff like that. I think it's something that like the more stories I hear of people like coming out of it and being like, hey, I've been sober for 2 months, I've been sober for a year, I've been sober for 5 years. Like I thoroughly love seeing that and hearing those stories. And I just wish there were more support systems for that. Now, luckily, you've had someone who, as a mentor in CJ, both in surfing and in life, has been able to help that.
Yeah.
Now, what support system do you think is out there that, you know, whether you experience or you've heard about, that you think people who are like, hey, I need to get help, that you think is like a good first step for them? Or at least was, you know, what did it for you?
I just felt like I lost myself. I think the last 4 years before I got sober, I surfed 4 times. I didn't own a surfboard. Or no, I had a 7.2 Anderson.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I was like, fuck, I need to get like the things that I thoroughly enjoy to do back into my life. So yeah, it was just like finding something that gives me joy.
Uh-huh.
Even though obviously surfing can be very frustrating, but you know, it's
Yeah, but don't you feel like you're less frustrated when the frustration comes up?
yeah, now.
Like you don't think like you're not gonna fucking like put your fist through a fucking board. You're like,
No.
like fuck it, whatever.
No, I just, you know, it gives me drive to want to surf better, and
Yeah, which
that's
is,
it.
I mean, that's what you want, right?
Yeah. But yeah, finding something that you love to do and just like throwing yourself into it. I was working a great job, getting paid well, but it, like the surfboard you're saying that doesn't work for you, like it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to be with someone at the time, and they were like, I don't give a shit how you pay your bills, just be happy. And so I just dove back into surfing 100%. And so like,
I mean, that's when you started like teaching and stuff more.
yeah, I was teaching, I was taking anything. I was doing tourist push lessons, just barely making it. I've now developed that into like a coaching business. And then that mixed with my sobriety and obviously CJ, I started meeting other people on this path. And there's a guy named Mark Campbell who's another huge inspiration on me. He's up in Santa Cruz. And now I'm a part of Loose Change, which is like, you know, bettering your life and through surfing, mental health and sobriety.
Yeah, that's, you guys do those retreats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really fun support system. Like every one of the events that we've thrown, I'm still hearing from the patrons today, and I actually just surfed with a couple of them the other day.
Oh, that's awesome.
They're getting together on their own, and they're all over the world. So it's a really cool sense of community, and that's really like the support system that I feel everyone should get, like some sort of support system that's positive.
I mean, that's probably why like meetings work for people, right? Because it's not, you're not alone.
Right.
Like it's representation. Like I think it's like, hey, I think a lot of times any struggle, whether it be a mental health struggle, whether it be a physical struggle, let's say if you're an athlete and you like tore your MCL, right? Or you have substance abuse, when you're alone, you feel like you're the only person in the universe who has this problem.
Absolutely.
And it makes it 10 times worse. Versus when you're in a room or at a campsite and there's people who are going through the same thing and they have these little mechanisms they've created to deal with, whether it be physical pain or mental pain or like substance abuse, then you're like, oh, two things. One, I'm not alone. So people see me, I see them, right? Representation kind of thing. But then also like we're learning from each other how to cope with these things.
Totally.
And which I think is beautiful, right?
And it doesn't matter where you come from, what your background is, wealthy, you know, not so wealthy, it doesn't matter. It's like that even playing field of like, we're all people and we've all been through shit, and it's not like being on an island anymore. You know?
I mean, I think that's tough. I think that's tough like in anything. I think it's tough like one of the human traits that we're just DNA engineered, and this probably comes from Neanderthal caveman days. Like, we don't want to be alone. As much as there's that person, like, look, I fucking hate human beings. Like, I don't like talking to people.
I'm with that.
Yeah, yeah. Really, this is why we get along. And but at the same token, like, recently over the last like year, I've met people outside my typical friend group who might like the same music I like, and we go to concerts together and this and that, or like other things, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm not the only one who feels like this. And it's made me almost feel, um, the only word I could describe is like lighter. Like, I feel like I'm floating more, like everything feels softer, like it's almost like I went from like a hammer to a feather on everything. Like, it's like, hey, and it's translates into other stuff too, right? It translates into surfing, and like for me, like with design and making music and stuff, like I'm not so like kind of thing. And I think what you guys do with the retreats, because I've talked to some people who've gone to them and been on them, it's like amazing. Now, if someone wants to go on one of these retreats, how, like, when are you guys having another one?
The next one on the schedule is in October.
In October. And where will that one be?
That'll be Santa Cruz Farm.
Okay.
That's where we've done the last
That's
two.
sort of like your main base for doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah, the farm camps. We're gonna venture out,
Okay.
eventually go worldwide, but right now they're up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. There's no cell phone service. We're not on our
Which
phones.
is great.
We're connecting with humans and working on our surfing, working on our lives. And I think, there's a major demographic out there that wants to get help, and maybe a religion-based going to a daily meeting thing isn't so attractive to certain types of people like myself.
Yeah.
And not talking any shit on those programs. Anything that works for you, I'm for. But I personally was a little intimidated by that kind of approach. So just finding people that were like-minded and like connecting over one thing, whether you're a Wall Street guy or you're me, we both love surfing and we want to get better at surfing. That's my support group.
That's fair. I mean, I think that's fair. I think progression is something that, again, talking about DNA engineering, progression is something every human's kind of, you don't, like, what you learn in 6th grade is not going to be the thing that you stay on your whole life. Like, you're always trying to learn and progress.
Well, we hope.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy not to. It's like you could just be the fucking dummy who sits there and be like, I'm a fucking idiot. But like, I don't know. That doesn't appeal to me. I mean, I think that's the thing, like, even with surfing and skateboarding and playing music has always been like a real attractive thing to me. It's like every day, it might be a minor win. I mean, win's a bad word, but like a minor learning lesson,
right,
or major one. But every day I walk away and be like, okay, I learned something. Something happened.
Yeah.
Something, like, even on a bad day of surfing, you're like, okay, yeah, that was a sucky session, but at the end of the day, there was this little thing that like I could take from it. Like, oh, I did this. Oh, my foot placement when I did this turn was probably a little bit better. So when the waves are better, I could kind of like remember that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, even just being in the ocean, like being lucky enough to have the time to go surfing, like, it's already something I'm
people
for.
don't realize what a privilege that is, I think, sometimes. And I think that's the thing that's like interesting about the people who don't grow up by the ocean, is that they really can showcase that to people. They can really be like, no, you guys don't get it. This is easy. I mean, I think anything in the world like that is like if you live in an area where there's like amazing food, you're just going to take it for granted that like I could get the best pizza ever. And then you go to fucking Minnesota and you're like, this is fucking shitty.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wow, I can't wait to get home. I think we need more of that kind of, like, in surfing too, is that like these, I mean, I see kids every day that I'm like, you don't get it. Like, you're the 0.000000001% of the population.
Right.
You hit the fucking lottery. Share the wealth.
Right.
Understand, it's like that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it gets more crowded, but like, if we're taking the steps to teach the adult learner to paddle out properly and not be in the way and take turns and work a lineup, then it's a better place for all of us to enjoy, and that's the only reason we're out there.
Yeah, I think gatekeeping is something that I mean, it's a shitty term to start with, but it's something that I think has happened too often in surfing. And I know a lot of these older luminaries, they like to be like, well, if it's not fucking this way, it's not that. It's like, are you really helping surfing by doing that? I don't think so. In my mind, I don't think so. And look, reactionarily, like, I got treated like fucking shit a lot of the first couple of years of surfing. I mean, it's why this shit exists. It's why I started this whole podcast. It's like, it has a lot to do with it, and I definitely, my mindset has changed. And to your point, look, there's going to be adult learners, and it's the best interest in surfing, both industry and culture wise, that they're just shown the right way to do something versus being like, fuck you, get the fuck out of the water.
Right, you're not going to stop people from coming out.
No, I'd rather, like, I've tried to adopt the thing in the last couple of years. When someone does something wrong, like let's say if they cut me off and they're on like a Costco board, whatever the fuck they're on, right? They cut me off and stuff. Your natural reaction is to be like, fuck you, you fucking ruined my wave. Like, that's the easy human thing. Again, not progressing.
Not at all.
But the progression thing would be like, paddle up to them and be like, hey, just so you know, it's kind of dangerous what you did because X, Y, and Z could happen and someone could run into you, and we have 10-foot boards with no leashes and, like, God forbid. So next time, just do this. That person is going to remember that. I'd rather them remember that than remember being yelled at by someone and being like, I can't go near that person. Because that's fucking shitty. That's not going to fucking do anything for the culture, because then what you're going to do is, this is my perspective, if you look at it from an industry side, that person's going to be pissed off and look at the equipment you ride and be like, I don't want to fucking ride that equipment because that person's a fucking asshole.
Right.
Versus them being like, oh, Mike told me something really cool. What kind of board is that? Oh, cool. Here's my money. I'm going to buy the board, and I'm going to keep buying those fucking boards.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the financial side of it. From the culture side of it, is like, next time they go out, they're not going to be in your way, and they're actually going to be kind of fun to surf with.
So you know how I once was, and a few of the guys in our crew. I think that exactly has happened, where if we're assholes in the water, it's based on ego, there's anger involved. As we evolve as humans, we're now in this place where we can take these almost accidents and turn them into teachable moments. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously good for business, but it's also great for our environment, because we want to go have fun and we don't want people getting hurt. And we want it to flow. And if we're not going to stop people from getting in the water, we might as well have a good approach to it and teach them the proper way, because a lot of these people didn't grow up like I did. Like, I was handed this thing. My dad was never a great surfer, but he taught me how to surf. He went out in the water and pushed me into waves, and like, I understood what was and wasn't acceptable in the water based on people getting hurt, dying, or breaking your board or dinging and getting yelled at, which turns into, when I was a kid, a lot of physical altercation on the beach.
Nobody wants that.
And a lot of us had trouble leaving that behind, but it's gone. It's not the way of the future, and it's not the smart way to approach anything. So open arms. Let's just have a good time. And if you don't understand, ask questions. We'd rather you ask questions than just be fumbling around in the whitewater and possibly getting hurt or in the way.
What's your biggest wish that you would like to see happen in surfing? Like, if you were like, hey, surfing genie, rub the fucking lamp.
Oh man, on the spot.
I know it's a hard one, because there's a lot of things that like can happen, but like, what would you say, like, hey, if this happened, surfing would be in a better place in my eyes?
I would really enjoy a movement of people not hating one another based off of the craft that they choose to ride, the style of surfboard.
No, that's legit.
Like, we understand that longboarders get too many waves because it's easier to catch, and shortboarders are upset with that. And there's days where both can be out comfortably, but I would also appreciate people choosing the proper equipment to where they're catching more waves on smaller days and less likely to be an asshole to me riding a longboard. Also, like, breaking that box of like what is okay for a longboard or a shortboard, or what's cool, and I'm against this, fuck that, I love this. Like, we're all out to have fun, so who gives a shit what I'm riding?
That's true. I mean, at the end of the day, like it always goes back to we started doing this for fun.
Right. Longboarders have lost the plot completely. Like, we chose this thing on purpose that we know wasn't cool and was never going to get enough love or income or whatever because we love it. And then we're going to walk down the street and shit on somebody for having too many fins on their board or too much rocker or wearing a leash. I mean, please wear a leash if you think that you should, because it's a safer place for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just wish everyone could fucking relax on what is cool and what isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, though, generally in the world. 2 last questions. 1, what's your favorite tattoo you've gotten and why?
Well, I don't even know all the tattoos I have, but I believe.
But see, that's the best place to be.
Yeah.
Like when you can't count them. Like I've ventured into that boat, and someone asked me how many times I got tattooed, and I had to sit there seriously for like 15 minutes trying to figure it out.
I'll tell you what, my next one is my least favorite because in this old age and not being, or older age and not being angry about life, they fucking hurt way more than they used to.
Yeah, yeah.
So that'll be my least favorite, but I think my fucking bitchin'.
And what's the story behind that one?
My friend Ed, who...
Ed Factor?
The Ed Factor.
Yeah, we have to put the D.
Yeah.
Does he get a sir, like the sir, or just the?
I believe he's been knighted.
Yeah, he should be.
Yeah,
I'm a big believer in that. Yeah,
I think Sir Paul McCartney knighted.
Yeah, there's Sir Ed Factor. I think
I'm pretty sure
we'll make that happen.
The Hot Dogger Championship.
Yes.
He and I were running around Hermosa for quite a few years, and I don't know, a thing just that we would yell at each other at the bars and stuff was fucking bitching, and yeah, it was just a really fun time in life. He and I went and got matching tattoos one night, and that was probably my favorite.
Yeah, like true soul buddies. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I interview you for episode 1. This will be, I believe, either episode 89 or 90.
Wow.
Long time. And I asked you this question last time, and I want to see if it changes at all. What's your favorite wave to surf and why?
Wow. My favorite wave to surf.
Like you could be like, I'm going to surf it, even with people, not people, whatever the vibe is that you like. Based on memory or someplace you never surfed. No, it should be someplace you surf. Why is that your favorite place?
I would say, well, so I did a trip recently to Panama for 3 weeks. Fell in love with the people, the country, the waves. But specifically Playa Vanal.
Okay.
Such a bitchin' little beach community, and it'll probably be a very different place in the next 5-10 years. But the simple fact that obviously the surf is incredible, water's warm, everything's great.
Is that the place that you had like a couple of clips pop up on Instagram?
Yeah, the most recent clips. I'm in trunks in the middle of the winter, so that's all that stuff.
Yeah, it's always good.
Needed a break from the cold, but really, the surf community there is so new and so small, so passionate about surfing and longboarding, singleton longboarding especially. To see like that spark you're talking about, like people are excited to do it, they want to learn about it. Yeah, it was such a great experience. So I think that right now is my favorite. And I know that 7-8 years ago, whenever we did this last, it was church.
Yeah.
That hasn't really changed, I think, as far as like accessibility. I don't surf.
There's just no sand there. Get rid of the fucking sand.
It's when it's right, it's still my favorite for like the performance aspect. But yeah, I don't know that I've surfed there in a couple of years.
It hasn't been the same. It hasn't been, I don't think, since 2021.
Yeah.
Those rains just fucked it all. All that sand fucking just, like the way that I understand it from reading a lot about like the science of surfing, it's basically muted the wave.
Okay.
Like it's just all the sand is covered the cobblestone, so when it breaks, it's a softer break. It's not that lump comes and you're like, I know exactly what to do. I turn around and now you're like, I'm paddling like a fucking moron and nothing's happening, and then it closes out.
You missed that tight pocket.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, I mean, I've been surfing. I moved to Oceanside a year ago, so I've been surfing south and kind of rediscovering waves that I haven't surfed in a long time and frequenting them, and a lot more Sano. which the evolution of my boards and my mind.
But you've been surfing there really good though. That's the thing, and I think the approach you have to surfing that wave is very different from most of the people that grew up surfing there.
Yeah, I mean,
because I could see just an automatic, like you could see an automatic of like, hey, I've been surfing it since I've been like 10 years old.
For sure.
And they just have this automatic, and it's something about, I noticed this a lot about people who like grew up surfing beach breaks, like yourself, Worm. Even when Grant comes and surfs it, you guys have like a different approach to it. And I think it's like kind of interesting.
Yeah, we take that with us wherever we go. I've heard that every point break.
I mean, my favorite longboard surfers are people who grew up surfing beach breaks.
Mine too.
Yeah, I just tend to like you guys, like, you know, Alex, like I'm like, that's who I want to watch. I don't want to watch, no offense, fucking, I don't want to watch anyone from fucking Malibu. It's fucking boring. Like, I'm sorry. I will say that. Like, it doesn't do it for me.
You know? That's how you feel, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's like my vibe, okay. And like how I like my pizza and you know, how I want my burger cooked. You know, some people like it well done and some people want pineapple on their pizza.
Totally.
I just don't want that. Okay, awesome. I'm glad we got to sit down.
Me too.
This remix. Good stuff. There we go. Boom.